And in the first monetary policy meeting of the Tinubu administration, the Central Bank of Nigeria the committee elected to raise rates by 25 basis points. Now, Nigeria's central bank says raising the benchmark lending by 25 basis points to 18.75% from the previous 18.5% is an aggressive push to contain Nigeria's inflationary pressures. The just concluded meeting of the MPC is on the front burner of our talk this morning as we try to unpack it and understand the economic impact as well as the consequences of this particular decision. We're joined this morning by Mr. Yusho Aliu. He is an economic analyst, and joining us via Zoom from Yola is Benjamin Ngabla, who is a former banker and a financial expert. Gentlemen, good morning to both of you, and thank you very much for coming on the program.
Thank you. Good morning.
Right, so where do we start from? I'd like to first of all just get your initial thoughts on this one, Mr. Yusho. For a lot of people, the economy is doing pretty badly for quite some time now, and this just looks like yet another step that could further strangulate the Nigerian economy while also making things really hard for Nigerian businesses across board. What do you make of this decision?
Obviously, all economists, especially on monetary policy, try as much as possible to look into conventional tools which are orthodox in nature, and they're looking at also certain parameters in the economy to make sure that at least there is price stability in that economy. But economics always try to portray one silent issue but very cogent, that is assumptions that under ceteris paribus, one thing, whatever that you are putting into an economy, it has to be under certain conditions, that if A condition is met, B is met, then probably this is going to be the outcome. That is when you are also concerned with input-output analysis, looking at the CRR, looking at the MPR, looking at the cash liquidity in the banking. But in my own opinion, the beauty of Monetary Policy Committee is that it has 11 members, and these 11 members always try. It has an odd number, meaning that at any point in time there must be decision. Yesterday I was on this platform, and I was expecting based on the fact that this is the first monetary policy committee, not by the administration but by the acting central bank governor, and with the highest inflation of 22.79% in June, and then also looking at the gap between the inflationary trend of possibly May, which is 0.38% changes. So I am expecting for the bank to look at the concern of price regulation. But however, many speculators, many economic analysts projected that there should be an increase because there is increase in inflation. But in my own, what I disagree with that is a simple fact. These facts remain that yes, of course, if you have to control money supply, the first thing you must make as a banker is to understand the liquidity in the economy. And once the liquidity is at weight what you are expecting, there is problem. But there is a problem there. There is an associated problem with the floating exchange rate in the economy. And that is giving so much of pressure in any.
Is this all just too much at the same time for you?
Yeah, it's too much for the for the center. Look, you see, I have listened to the brief by the acting central bank governor, and he stressed that there are
pent-up demand.
Yes. What he tried to refer as exogenous forces and indigenous forces, that is the G&D, the global factors and domestic factors. These are very cogent. These are unconventional. No conventional economy thought that there is going to be war in Russia, and that war is going to distort prices at the world market, and that will affect the supply factors. Nobody concerned about that one.
All right, let us bring in Mr. Benjamin at this time. Good morning, Mr. Benjamin. Thank you. I'm sure you have listened to Mr. Yushau in his opening remarks about what were the contentions before the Monetary Policy Committee. Yesterday, the governor said they had only two choices, to hold or to raise. Whilst they were thinking of what to do, 6 of them voted for a mild raise because they were coming to the understanding that the rate of the spike in the inflation figure is moderating compared to when it was growing at about 1,000 basis points. And they were also concerned about talks around the government palliative, which would be, if they settle for monetary palliative, which will see more money, flow into the system and probably worsen the inflation figures. But the question really for most other watchers of economic activities is that for 14 months, we have been on the raise from 11% to now 18.75%. Are these the only tools that are available for us with regards to reining in inflation and maintaining price stability? What else could we have done, to support the economy to begin to see a downward trend in inflation figures?
Thank you very much for this question you asked. What other things can be done? Is it the only tool that is supposed to be used for this kind of issues? Let me start by categorically mentioning that, you see, when there's an increase in the interest rate of an economy, some things happen. One, there's going to be a very expensive borrowing to businessmen and the customers. Another thing that normally happens is that there's going to a kind of decrease. It lowers economic growth because it is normally, when the interest is high, the people that has a lot of money will want to kind of invest their money, deposit it in the bank so that they will get more interest, which discourages the issue of making money out. Yes, one of the reasons is, another thing is that is going to reduce money in circulation and possibly control the inflation. But my question is, the people should have looked practically at the effect of so many things that are happening at the same time in the economy. Yes, when the borrowing becomes very expensive for people, you understand that economic activities is going to be lowered and the money in circulation is going to be reduced while prices of things are going high. Fuel subsidy has been done not long back. I think they should check another tool. To me, let these people try to look at exactly, the MPC should look at some practical issues concerning this economy and see how it is going to be tackled. For me, I didn't support this one at this stage because it's still going to add more hardship on the citizenry, and which I believe by reducing the money in circulation, by lowering the economy activities, and by making the borrowing very expensive for people, is going to push more pressure on our economy. That yes, I had not long back, around, is it April or May, where I had the CBN governor, former, was suspended, was saying that if not because of the increase to 18.5, the interest rate would have, the inflation would have reached 30 or thereabout, 30%. But I still believe that some other parameters should be checked. For me, at this stage, there are so many things that should be looked into, not really looking at the indicator of this particular tool. Because, like I said, the pressure is too much, the economy is so hard, and so many things done at the same time. I think they should revisit this. I'm not really inclined with this particular thing. Right. Thank you very much.
And I suppose because of the point you made earlier, Mr. Shio, about the number of the members in the committee, 11, which is an odd number, that allows for a democratic process. We know that it was not a unanimous decision, so it's safe to say that this is just the majority judgment. Let's take a look at the half-empty part of the argument. What could be the blowback? What could be the counterproductive aspect of it, if there is any? Just leaning into what Mr. Benjamin is talking about, contracting the economy, further worsening the situation? Because, I mean, you just talked about how this is a standard approach. When the inflation figures are high, what you do is to check it by raising interest rates, so it stabilizes a little bit. But then again, there are other variables at play here. What could be the blowback from this decision of the MPC?
You see, the most significant role that we expect the central bank to play in the economy is to establish price stability. And price stability is established when you look at the economy practically. You use the orthodox where necessary, and you use the unorthodox where necessary. I have said it. Look, MPR, raising it is counterproductive in an economy that has an inflation of over 22.79%. Is going to add to the cost of borrowing. As an investor, if I am to access additional funds, assuming I'm a baker and I need to expand because of the growing market, definitely I will push the price pressure on the same product which is going to the market. And it has highlighted by the MPC that they are still anticipating inflation to increase. And despite the fact that they are anticipating, and they are increasing the rate. So if these are things that is not balanced.
So basically what you are saying is you talked about one of the primary functions of the CBN, which is price stability. But there is also what we are doing in this case by your analysis is that we are trading growth for price stability.
Yes.
Right? How do we find the balance? Because you mentioned something that is also key, which the central bank highlighted. Remember, the current inflation figures are for the month of June.
Yes.
Prior to the unification of the exchange rate. And the MBS also told us that, in fact, the figures were from the first 2 weeks.
Right, exactly. So on the reporting.
So it's more or less.
So it's not the
if we capture the 620 naira fuel prices
hike
and the fact that the dollar has not touched base at 870 at the parallel market, we should be seeing some spike. So did you think, in your own estimation, that there was a serious dilemma between trading growth for inflationary pressures or pressure, considering that any moment from now, the federal government would also be unleashing its palliative if they make true their promise?
Right.
What else, which is the question I asked, what else was available for them to deploy? And let us also not forget that there is the fiscal part of the economy that is completely redundant because we have no ministers, so to say. So what else was available for us to
I think before I even comment on that, even the acting CBN yesterday was not comfortable with the unification as a concept. I have watched carefully. So, but the floating exchange rate, no matter what, I have said it, if you are to establish a situation for stability, price stability, definitely you have to, if you have in mind that even with the adjustment of the MPR, that inflation is expected, what is supposed to have been done is to halt the MPR from being pushed to about 25 basis, because that will help you to now understand other aspects, because consecutively for a very long period, MPR has been pushing the price up, because even the existing borrowing for the past 2-3 years is being updated when you push the rate, and that also advanced to the price. Right. So what I thought is that, like I pointed out in a program like this yesterday, is that halting it first, and then you look. Remember, the CBN is moderating the monetary policy, and is moderating the inflation at the same time. So if you are on that course, definitely you need to moderate the exchange rate. If the exchange rate, if you don't want to use import I and E window, definitely the economy is pushed by cost of transportation, and this
Okay, just finish your line of thought.
And this cost of inflation that is coming from the fuel hike has to do with intervention by the bank. If under certain condition there must be supply. Then definitely there must be intervention to moderate the inflation through the PMS pricing.
Right. Obviously, we're dealing with shifting sands here for the most part of it, because there are so many variable factors that keep changing. But bringing back Mr. Benjamin Gablai to the conversation, there seems to be an alignment issue here, because the administration, on one hand, you have the president talk about loosening some of these regulations. He just suspended the excise tax policy, trying to give businesses an opportunity to breathe, an opportunity to grow. And he's also talked about lowering interest rates. For most people, this seems to be in direct opposition of what the administration is trying to do with the economy. How do you see this playing out? Do you think the presidency could lean on the CBN through the MPC to review this downward? How do you see this playing out if we're supposed to stabilize or perhaps carry out a balancing act on this issue?
I think there should be a synergy between the CBN and the executive. I think both of them are trying to see how we make this economy grow, but there are some quick decisions that are taken that I think there was not a roundtable discussion on it, and it was not really assessed to some extent. Like I said, just like Mr. Yushao is talking about orthodox, I think there are some practical things that are supposed to be looked into and begin to assess which of this will match. At the same time, which of this will work better for Nigeria. There's something I made clear earlier, that you see, when the issue of mopping up the money in the economy to reduce the inflation is going on, and you still make the borrowing to be very expensive, what happens is that people that had money to go and build houses so that laborers could get what to eat, people that are selling food will get what to eat, people that are selling water will get what to eat, will be shrinked. So I think my major advice here is that people should, I think the government should have a synergy. They should sit together. They should begin to look at things from a practical and orthodox play out. We should, at least to some extent, suspend a book knowledge of this thing and look at Nigeria closely, and begin to see how and what will work for Nigeria best. But the issue of MPR being increased and exchange rate being increased is even anticipating another increase in the inflation, and people are really going down on daily basis, shrinking the economy again, mopping up money from the economy again, and making it so hard for people. I think there should be synergy between the two, the central bank and the government, to come with a practical solution to this issue quickly and try to adjust all these parameters to see how best Nigeria will have it better.
Coming back to you, Mr. Isha, I think it's important that we put certain things in context with regards to understanding, you know, what the considerations were. Of course, in the coming days, we'll see the note of each of the persons who voted and what influenced the positions that they took. But in trying to understand this, when I talked about other things that could be done outside the purview of the monetary policy, I was doing that in response to your comment around exogenous factors and domestic factors. And the exogenous factors are not directly under the control of the monetary policy authorities. First of all, there is a rising cost of transportation, which you alluded to, and the CBN, for instance, will not buy buses and put them on the road. That is clearly the function of governance, right? Yes. Farmers are unable to access farmlands. We are in the middle of the rainy season, and we do mostly wet season farming in Nigeria. If they are unable to do so on the basis of insecurity, there isn't much the central bank can do, and food prices and cost of transportation, as far as our inflation numbers are concerned, have been some of the biggest contributors to the basket. I mean, we have seen food inflation going up for the last 2 years.
Yes.
You know, and coupled with the floods that we had, we are hearing we'll have worst situations this year. Even with the directive of the president, we understand that the food banks that we have, the strategic reserve, are not even enough to sustain us for let's say 6 months, for instance. So we have a dire situation in our hand. And my question really is, Why is these people continue on the path of orthodoxy, which is what is recommended by the textbook as an economist yourself? What can the fiscal space do, really, to begin to ameliorate these concerns? Because once you can bring down cost of transportations and make food available for people, you would have taken care of our 50% of these concerns, and we can begin to see moderations at that level. What do you think?
What I think is that the executive is just, at the state and even federal, they are just concerned about moderating temporarily the shocks that is taking place in the economy. But still coming back to the central bank, it lies there, because if you cannot maintain price stability for at least 90 days, which is 3 months, there is problem with the policies you are adopting. Liquidity is one. And the way and manner at which this the exchange market is being operated is also dangerous. And that is why at the beginning I said that
with the floating?
No, not with the floating. Right. What I'm trying to stress is simple, that anytime you are taking an economic decision, it is based on an assumption that there are certain factors that must be held constant, or they will be held at certain level. So the situation that we have in Nigeria, where we are not getting it right, is that all economies that are applying those monetary policy rate and CRR are economies that are decent in nature. Decent in the fact that the economy with dollarization, economy with sock away safekeeping. You cannot at any point in time use the same parameters to check. The CBN must check the activities of the exchange rate properly, that even if, for instance, the operators at different angles, who are those keeping dollars at home?
But if I understand what you are saying, it will amount to practically or forcefully controlling the use of the dollar in the economy, and that is not something that is easy to do. We are just coming from an election, and we know how much the dollar played a role in that election. With spendings are now done because inflation has wiped up the value of
that. Is the abnormal behavior that is giving abnormal situation, and we are now facing.
How do we control a situation where the CBN is saying there is a pent-up demand for the dollar, and the dollar is just not available? As you are aware, about $2 billion have been wiped off our excess, our reserve, you know, because of what we have seen in the last couple of months. We are opening up, allowing everybody access to the country's strategic reserve without earning. There is nothing we are selling to the world other than crude oil. So how do you, on the one hand, try to maintain the price of a dollar you don't have? Because maintaining it, you mean CBN meeting the demand of the market and allowing the market to slow down. How is that possible?
It is possible because the bank has already clarified why you must access, for instance, the dollars for transaction purposes. I am telling you, the abnormality is not as a result of demanding same exchange rate for any economic reason. It's demanded either for political reason or other reasons. And that is the abnormality that is not...
So you're saying that people who are not necessarily importers...
Yes.
Who are getting access to the dollar and therefore
into the business.
Compounding the...
For instance, the round tripping. And not only round tripping, you find definitely, because it is a transition period, many politicians who have stuck a lot of naira and they want to have safekeeping, they rush to the same market for the same transaction purposes within the domestic market, because the bureau de change window is still in operations, and they are the ones that manage mostly those kind of transactions, and the central bank is there. Now, what I am trying to imply is a simple thing. There must be efficiency in the management. Once you don't have efficiency, once you have a lot of loopholes, once you are having an economy that primarily ought not to be a dollarized economy, and you are now encouraging it at all forces. People spend exchange rate that does not belong to Nigeria, not only in dollar term, even at the border term, you find a transaction taking place not in our domestic currency.
The CFA is a lot more dominant.
Yes. So, and that is why I have that emphasis that please let us look at those factors that are unorthodox. Now halt the MPR and then look at the supply bottlenecks. The supply bottlenecks can be handled. How many farmers are displaced? How are they going back to their farm location? Because food food inflation is over 25% year on year, and it is still increasing based on many reasons. The cost of input is high, the cost of transportation is high, the technology is low, and at the same time also the production lines is not equal to the size of the population.
Right. So we're not dealing with an ideal situation here, and I think we've made that abundantly clear from the line of questioning to the views of our experts on this particular talking point. But Mr. Benjamin, if we can just circle back to what CBN has been up to lately from last year to this year, because this is kind of like CBN doubling down on a trajectory that they've started last year, about 14 months ago or thereabout, right? Even the narrow design policy under the MFLA-led administration of the CBN. Do you think this is a continuation of that same trajectory, or is the CBN by taking this particular position through the Monetary Policy Committee, is it in any way going to stunt the direction that it has already taken to address the inflationary concerns around the value of the naira, for instance, going into the future?
I think the main concern I have about all these things they've been doing is that there is no consistency. And if the consistency, I think the even goal to achieve is not the same thing. They are working, yes, I agree with that, but some of the policies been dumped on the way, the redesign was dumped somewhere. The issue of minimum withdrawal through the bank, which would have helped in making the funds to be with the central bank, has been dumped on. By that would have been a very better way of the monetary policy to work harder. If you know better, you know, if it's easier for this. Lately, looking at what has happened towards the end of last year and to this year, at the end of it all, it was not sustained. So the money in circulation still has gone out of the bank to the hands of the people, and there's no synergy, there is no consistency. There's a need for a roundtable discussion by the people concerned to see if there's any way they can work hand in hand to help Nigerians not to suffer too much. Right. Thank you.
And on that particular note, what is your take about the consistency of it? I mean, Mr. Sunday made a very important point, which I think we have to emphasize a lot more. There's a lot that is happening with the economy that's outside the purview of the CBN, right? The CBN is only acting on what the CBN can only do, right? Which is to decide at what rate we're going to peg our interest rate in, controlling liquidity and all of these stuff. But the other factors, they're largely political, they're social in nature, and that is not where the CBN's mandate lie. But if you consider all the pieces of the puzzle, right, and this particular decision, how would you recommend the Tinubu administration navigate this? Because he does have, the fiduciary responsibility to get things right, and I suppose for political reasons he would want all of his ideas to come to fruition. How would you recommend the government addressing the bigger picture take on this?
Like I said earlier, Nigerian economy is sick. It's sick when you have an inflation of 22.79. Definitely consumers' power is going to be eroded, the purchasing power is going to be reducing, and the GDP will be slow. And if you are to check these things, you have to be patient to look into the monetary policy as well as fiscal policies. Fiscal policies will help government to identify areas of strengths in the economy, and at the same time also to make policies that will keep job. Because if you are not keeping job and inflation is also taking away the little people have in the economy, they still bounce back to the GDP expectation from the fiscal responsibility. However, I am of the opinion that the central bank has a research department. Central bank has all the powers to target liquidity at any point. Central bank must understand the availability, the M1, M2, M3 factors, because it is very.
Haven't they done that to a certain extent successfully from last year?
They have not done it. I know what I'm saying. The same central bank told us when they are moving into Naira redesign, that over 80% of liquidity is not within the banking vault. And that's what we have been agitating. And it was a surprise because I brought that matter more concise during that period. I said, look, central bank must understand the liquidity. If you don't understand the liquidity, you cannot push in rate. You are just pushing rate without controlling the liquidity.
Right.
And it bounced back to repercussion to autonomous consumers. Mostly the economy is facing very large number of autonomous consumers, doesn't have work.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes. We've been speaking to economic analyst Yushau Aliu. It's a pleasure to have you in the studio.
Thank you, it's my pleasure.
And Mr. Benjamin, thank you very much for joining us from Yola. It's a pleasure to have you join us this morning.
Thank you.
We wish there was time to continue to drill down on this and many other concerns that would have emanated from yesterday's Monetary Policy Committee meeting. But this is the much that time will permit us. Once again, thank you very much for coming.